The growing divergence in classic Mercedes ownership. I call it a divergence because you're starting to see two classes of people that own these cars. And there's a third class that we'll discuss that I wish there were more of, but there's really not enough of them. So we have 90% going in two different directions, and then we have 10% going in a third direction. Two paths diverged in a yellow wood, and I took the path less traveled by. So of those 90%, I would say the majority of them, probably 75%, 3/4 of those people, go down the path of looking for a car on one of the major websites, whether it's Cars and Bids, Bring a Trailer, Hemmings, Collector Cars Online, one of those sites that everybody knows. Sometimes it could be Facebook Marketplace, sometimes it could be a specialty website like John Woods' website, but for the most part, they're the auction websites. I think we know which auction website. And what they'll do is they'll buy the car, they will spend too much money on it, buying it, and then without even really knowing if it's the car they want, they'll spend too much money fixing it up, and then after 1 or 2 years they're out. Whether they have a financial issue in the family that forces the sale, like a divorce. There are divorces that do this stuff, and I've talked to guys that have had to get divorces and sell their collector cars. So that's the typical one. Or a medical expense, or somebody's finances suddenly take a downward turn because they overinvested in real estate or something, but they have to get rid of the car. The second one is they just get bored with it, which is the more common one. So they have the car for a couple years and they enjoy it, a little bit, and then they sell it because they want something else. And so I started asking myself why people don't hang on to cars longer, why they don't appreciate anything anymore. And I look at it this way, right? The first one, and I've said this in my other videos, there's like an over-accumulation of stuff that the previous generation purchased and hoarded, certain types of material possessions. And the older I get and the more crap that I inherit from different avenues, the harder I find it is to be a minimalist. I've always espoused minimalism. I love minimalism, but with a growing collection of classic Mercedes and other stuff, a lot of parts and tools and this and that, I'm like, I'm not really a minimalist anymore, am I? Well, I have to think about how I'm going to thin out the herd. This creates a lot of anxiety for me, and we'll talk about why in a second. Now, the second class of people, the 25% of the 90%, if you're following me, those people tend to acquire the car through their family. And I know that some of you may think that this is not that common. It's actually very common. So that 75% want a finished, done, perceivably perfect car. They get it. It's not a finished, done, perceivably perfect car. They either do nothing with it or they overinvest in it, then they sell it. The second group of people, which is the customer group I prefer working with, inherits the car from a family member, or they acquire the car for a lower number through their family. And I like this because suddenly the car is not really like an object that you pass along when you're bored with it. It becomes what I call a family jewel. All about family jewels. Family jewels are very important. Oftentimes, if you want to have a great connection with a deceased family member that was dear to you, whether it's a parent or an aunt or an uncle or a grandparent or a cousin, somebody that you actually really treasured and appreciated in your life, there's no better way than driving their car. And sometimes I think of my dad. I wish that I had one of my dad's old cars. Even the car that he couldn't stand, his 1976 280 that he barely drove. I think maybe in the 6 or 7 years he owned this car, he put 300 miles on it. He always said it was a piece of junk. but he always kept it indoors, away from the Texas sun. It was a beautiful car. It was dark blue on bamboo. It's one of those cars I still remember very clearly. My dad hated the car, but he secretly loved the car. And his red 280 SE 4.5, I wish I could find that car, but I can't. If I had one of my dad's cars, I still have my first car. It's in horrible condition. One of these days I will restore it. I don't know how I'm going to start. It's not going to be easy. It's going to have to be taken apart to the last nut and bolt and sent to the dippers. And it's probably going to happen after my daughter's a little bit bigger. She and I can work on it together because I don't want to lose the time with my child. But I'm creating something really interesting here because one day when little Madeline is a young lady and I can't drive anymore, my time has come and the Lord has called me back to him, she will be stuck with a horde of Mercedes to take care of. And do I really want this for her? Will she want this for her? Will it ruin the experience? And I think about this and I go, well, what am I going to do with some of these cars? There's some cars I don't think she'll want, like the 86 300E or the, 123 diesel sedans. As nice as they are, I don't think she would want all of them. So that brings me to the 10%. There's a 10% column that will buy a car in Marketplace or buy a car on word of mouth, and they're not afraid to fix the car up. They're not afraid to try it. Sometimes they might go about it wrong, but they're not afraid. And what I see is that this group of people is quite rare because they're not afraid of imperfection. But there's a chunk of them, I'd say half of them don't actually really appreciate the car. They just view it as a cheap car. They sort of half-ass, pardon my French, they half-ass the repairs in the car. The other half really wants to do the car right. So what we're left with is a very small group of people who seek out classic Mercedes that need a bunch of TLC and actually get it done right and make sure the cars are ready for their ownership or the next generation's ownership. Now, the way I see things is like this. One of the reasons that so many decent looking cars get parted out by companies like Used Auto Services or other scrap yards is because people do not want to take a 300,000 mile 300D that's rough around the edges or a 200,000 mile 560 SEL that needs a valve job and paint and interior but is otherwise a solid car and actually fix the car up. They don't want to do it. Because we haven't reached a point in our society yet where we realize that new cars are just an appliance. And it's a dangerous fact because you don't see a lot of people using vintage washing machines and refrigerators. They're happier just to go buy a washing machine or a refrigerator every 7 to 10 years because it's cheap and easy. And you know what? There's no fun in using it. I remember our old appliances, they were a lot of fun to use. And I think about this. You turn the timer on the dryer and it had a mechanical timer with a spring in it, and you get to watch the water fill up, and then there was that great smell, and it was heavy and solid, and if something broke, the washer dryer repairman would come and fix it and say, oh, you need this or that, and now it's like, oh, it broke, okay, go get another one at Home Depot, because it's disposable. And we see a dilapidated washing machine. This is my favorite analogy, by the way, or a dilapidated refrigerator. And we're like, that thing looks disgusting. Somebody throw it away. If we buy a house and there's like a fridge from the 80s or 70s, and we look at it, like 90% of people see no potential in it. The other 10% would like it if they can make it to work, get it to work, and then there's maybe a small sliver of a percent that say if it's broken, I'm going to fix it and use it because it's part of the house. And that's the analogy that we're headed towards with classic Mercedes. So it's my job and many of your other jobs to convince people that these are more than just refrigerators, that they do deserve long-term placement in your family. But the thing that I struggle with is that if I were to sell any of my cars, who would actually take care of them? The truth is nobody. Nobody. I promise you if I sold 5 of my cars, at least one of the 5 would end up crashed or totaled within the next 3 or 4 years. To me, that's a reality I don't want to live with. It's better if they just sit there because at least they're safe from rust and the elements and getting crashed. You know, if I meet an exceptional person that's not some idiot car guy that says, I want a really nice 300D, I understand that it's not perfect, but I just want a forever car I can pass on to my kids. Okay, come talk to me in 2 years and we'll see if you still want one of my cars. You know, I'll make you wait for it. Anyway, try to be the 5 of the 10%, the 5% of the 10%. See potential, you know, it's not easy. I'll see you guys in the future. Please like, share, and subscribe. Tap the bell for notifications. And thank you to our Patreons. We really appreciate you. I promise that none of your monies have gone into funding my Mercedes habit. I'll see you in the future.